Hello and welcome back to Neo Psychology with me, your teacher, Mr. Neo, the channel where I teach psychology and, now for you, sociology lessons to my wonderful students. Let's get started, shall we? Today, we're carrying on our family and household unit, specifically the childhood chapter. This is the last lesson on childhood until we have our end of unit test. But as we're not in school, I'll have to let you know how we're going to do that. Today's lesson 6, the new sociology of childhood. Ooh, what is this new sociology of childhood? Let's have a look at the starter. Do adults always know better than children? What percentage of the time do you think adults probably know better than children? And there's a few examples of some children that might know better than some adults. Let's have a look at our lesson objectives for today. Number 1, show comprehension and apply knowledge of age patriarchy, and learning objective 2, to identify and analyze the new sociology of childhood. Let's start on learning objective 1, age patriarchy. What is this age patriarchy? What's age patriarchy? Patriarchy, that means when the father or the man's in control. They say we live in a patriarchal society where men are in control and women are oppressed. Diana Gittins used the term age patriarchy to describe inequalities between adults and children. Just as feminists use the concept of patriarchy to describe male domination and female dependency, Gittins argues that there is also an age patriarchy of adult domination and child dependency. In fact, patriarchy means literally ruled by the father, and as Gittins points out, the term family refers originally to the power of the male head over all other members of the household, including children and servants as well as women. Today, this power may still assert itself in the form of violence against both children and women. So, for example, according to Kathy Humphreys and Ravi Thiara in 2002, a quarter of the 200 women in their study left their abusing partners because they feared for their children's lives. Such findings support Gittins' view that patriarchy oppresses children as well as women. So he's saying it's not just women that are being oppressed, it's children as well, and this is known as an age patriarchy. Evidence that children may experience childhood as oppressive comes from the strategies that children use to resist the status of child and the restrictions that go with it. So, they're saying there are ways in which children are going against this oppression, and they do this with strategies that children use to resist the status of children. How do they do this? What are the strategies? Let's have a look. Jennifer Hockney and Alison James describe one strategy as acting up. Okay? Acting up like adults by doing things that children are not supposed to do, such as swearing, such as smoking, such as drinking, alcohol, joyriding, and underage sexual activity. Similarly, children may exaggerate their age. I'm nearly 9, right? Or I'm nearly this. They usually exaggerate it. They say, so Hockney and James argue that one way that children are sort of protesting this age patriarchy is by acting older. I'm going to act up. I'm going to start swearing. I'm going to curse. I'm going to smoke. I'm going to drink alcohol. I'm going to act like an adult. So I'm going to go against this idea that I'm a child. Okay, I'm not going to be oppressed. I'm not going to be treated like a child, and I'm going to act up. However, acting down is another thing as well. Acting down is behaving in a way expected of younger children. It is also a popular strategy for resisting adult control. For example, by reverting to baby talk or insisting on being carried. Okay, I mean, I'm not talking like a 16-year-old baby talking and asking to be carried, but I mean like maybe like a 5-year-old who's clearly old enough to walk and talk properly. They might go, "Oh, daddy, can you pick me up, please?" And they might act down, right? They're resisting this this thing by acting as a child. Hockey and James conclude that modern childhood is a status from which most children want to escape. Okay, so they're looking at the idea of child as a status. You're a child, you have the status of child. And they may protest this by acting up, acting older than they are, or acting down, acting younger than they are. However, critics of the child liberationists' view argue that some adult control over children's lives is justified on the grounds that children cannot make rational decisions and so are unable to safeguard their interests themselves. Okay? Child liberationists would say, no, children can act for themselves. We are responsible. We can do what we want, right? Whereas critics, possibly people of the March of Progress view, would say, well, actually, the reason why the parents are in control or the adults are in control is because children cannot make rational decisions. Okay? Mother knows best. Critics argue that although children remain under adult supervision, they are not as powerless as the child liberationists claim. For example, as we saw earlier, the 1989 Child Act and the United Nations Convention of the Rights of the Child establish the principle that children have legal rights to be protected and consulted. So they're saying, well, actually, critics of this child liberation is saying, well, no, they do get a lot of freedom, they do get a lot of rights, and you can see that these rights are put into law as well. It's not just parents giving children their rights, it's put into law. Okay, 4 questions for you. Give these 4 a go, please. Pause the video and give those goes an answer, right? Define age patriarchy. Give an example of age patriarchy. How might children resist the status of children or child? And then give 2 criticisms of the child liberationist view. Give those a go, please. Pause the video, answer those 4 questions. Off you go. Right, let's go and have a look through the answers. Number 1, define age patriarchy. Child liberationists argue that children are victims of age patriarchy, which is the domination of fathers or adults generally. 2, give an example of age patriarchy. Adults exercise control over children's times, like bedtimes, space, like where they're allowed to go, and bodies, for example, what they're allowed to eat and what they're allowed to wear. So this is an example of age patriarchy, it's an example of control that parents or adults have over children. How might children resist the status of child? Children may resist the restricted status of child by acting up, so acting older, for example, smoking, drinking, alcohol, sex, etc. Or acting down, acting younger, by talking like a child or wanting to be carried. And number 4, give 2 criticisms of the child liberationist view. What are the criticisms? Some adult control over children's lives is justified on the grounds that children cannot make rational decisions and children are not as powerless as child liberationists claim. For example, children have legal rights. And that's age patriarchy. Okay? Identify one thing you learned about age patriarchy. You should be able to define what it is. You should be able to give an example. Why do you think learning about age patriarchy is important? Why is this important? Have you experienced this? What's your opinions of age patriarchy? Do you agree with child liberationists? Do you think children should have more rights? Children should be given more freedoms and they should be able to do what they want? Or do you think, actually, no, I think it's quite good. I think the adults are in control for their own protection and it's in their best interest. A lot of children don't know what's best for them. How does age patriarchy apply in real life? Any examples you can think of when this is applied in real life? Any children that have sued their parents for not being independent? I know there's an episode of Simpsons on that. And what questions has age patriarchy raised for you? What are you still wondering about? If you got any questions, let me know. Put it in an email, ask me, or ask someone else in class. Have you done the age patriarchy bit? I'm wondering about this. Have you done it? You haven't? You're a mug. Okay. Show comprehension, apply knowledge of age patriarchy. We can do that, and I'm going to tick it off, whether you're happy with me or not. I'm doing it. Right, learning objective 2. To identify and analyze the new sociology of childhood. Ooh, what is this new sociology of childhood? Is it good? Let's find out. The new sociology of childhood. The views that we examined so far see childhood as socially constructed, right? Remember we did this. Childhood is a social construction. It's defined by the society that you're in. Depending on what culture or what society or what time period you're in, changes what might be defined as childhood. So, socially constructed, that is shaped by social processes such as industrialization, laws and government policies, and institutions such as the family and education system. While this helps us to understand how childhood changes over time, there is a danger of seeing children as merely passive objects who have no part in making their own childhoods. It risks seeing children from what Barry Mayle calls an adultist's viewpoint. That is, it may see children as mere socialization projects for adults to mold, shape, and develop, of no interest in themselves, but only for what they will only for what they will become in the future. A different view is taken by the new sociology of children. This approach doesn't see children as simply adults in the making. Instead, it sees children as active agents who play a major part in creating their own childhoods. Okay? They define what their childhood is about. They define what it's all about. Let's have a look at the child's point of view. For this reason, as Carol Smart says, the new approach aims to include the views and experiences of children themselves while they are living through childhood. Okay? What better perspective to get than the children's? As Mayle says, we need to focus on the present tense of children to study ordinary everyday life from the child's perspective. Okay? They need to look at it from the child's perspective. How are you going to understand children? You understand it from the present tense, from their perspective. So, for example, Mason and Tipper show how children actively create their own definitions of who is family, which may include people who are not proper aunts or grandfathers, etc., but who they regard as close. Okay, so it's shown that children can take initiative. They can define what they feel is the family. They can say, oh no, this a friend of my dad's, I'm quite close to him and I see him as an uncle. He's part of my family, you might argue. So children have their own opinions. Similarly, Smart et al.'s study of divorce found that far from being passive victims, children were actively involved in trying to make the situation better for everyone. So they're not just these little adults that shouldn't be taken, and they're not real people, they're children, they don't know what's going on. They go, no, actually from this perspective, the new sociology of childhood perspective, saying, no, you should take them from their point of view. They do understand what's going on, and they are passive, they're not passive victims, they're active, they're involved in the situation, they're active agents, is the terminology they used. Studies like these use research methods such as informal, unstructured interviews, which empower children to express their own views and allow researchers to see the world from the child's point of view. Okay? You don't want to come from this, quote, adultist perspective, understanding children from your adult perspective, when you should be understanding it from the new sociology of childhood perspective, from their perspective. Apply your knowledge of qualitative research methods by noting that unstructured interviews are a good way to see things from the child's viewpoint. Unstructured interviews is when you have an interview with people but you don't have any set questions. You just have certain topics that you might discuss. And then you can talk to the children and get them to go off on a tangent and talk about what they want. This enables sociologists to explore the diverse, multiple childhoods that exist even within a single society, For example, as Smart notes, there are disabled childhoods, Chinese childhoods, girls' childhoods, the childhoods of adopted children, poor children, and so on. They all come from different perspectives, none of which could be generalized. You can't say one child has the exact same lifestyle and life as another child. The child's point of view. Because it allows children to express their point of view, the new sociology of childhood also draws attention to the fact that children often lack power in relation to adults. As such, it is an approach favored by child liberationists who campaign in favor of children's rights and priorities. Okay, few questions for you lot now. Number one, what is meant by the idea that children are mere socialization projects? Two, how are children seen by the new sociology of childhood? And three, what is the child's point of view approach? Who might favor this approach? Pause the video, give yourself 5 minutes to answer those three questions. Off you go. Right, let's have a look at the answers. What is meant by the idea that children are mere socialization projects? Well, seeing children as socially constructed means we risk seeing children as passive objects and are mere socialization projects for adults to shape and develop. The new sociology of children view sees children as active agents who play a major part in creating their own childhoods. 2. How are children seen by the new sociology of childhood? The new sociology of children view sees children as active agents, like we just said, who play a major part in creating their own childhoods. For example, Smart's study of divorce found that children were actively involved in trying to improve the situation. So they're not passive, they don't just do nothing. Children aren't seen and not heard anymore, they are active agents. And number 3, what is the child's point of view approach? Who might favor this approach? Child liberationists, obviously. The child's point of view approach seeks to explore the many diverse childhoods that exist in society by taking the children's viewpoint. It is an approach favored by child liberationists because it draws attention to the fact that children often lack power in relation to adults, right? Of course, child liberationists are going to prefer this way, this perspective, because it's looking at things from the child's perspective. That's the new sociology of childhood. Okay, identify one thing you learned about the new sociology of childhood. Why do you think it's important to have this perspective? Why is it important to have this perspective? Well, because it makes you consider children's rights. It makes you consider it from the child's perspective. Before, we had lots of racism because we weren't considering it from the perspective of those minority backgrounds. We had lots of sexism because we didn't understand it from the perspective of women, for example. Now you can argue this is another prejudice, another way in which we can look from their perspective. How does the new sociology of children apply in real life? How does this apply in real life? How might this be helpful? Well, it might help children get freedoms that they should be having, maybe freedoms they don't necessarily have. And what questions has the new sociology of childhood raised for you? What are you still wondering about? Have you got any questions? Write them down. Ask me. Let me know. Or put it in the comment section. And there we go. There's learning objective 2 sorted. Are we happy with that? Good. There we go. On to the plenary now. See? Nice quick lesson this was. Topic summary. So we are finishing. This is the end of the childhood topic. Next unit, we are learning about demography. Okay, so let's sum up this topic. Let's sum up childhood. Childhood is a social. What do you think? Say it out loud. Did you say construction? Good. And varies between times, places, and groups. Most sociologists see our idea of childhood as a fairly recent one, the result of industrialization and other social changes. Modern society constructs childhood at the time of vulnerability, innocence, and segregation from the adult world. Some argue that we are witnessing the disappearance of the topic, childhood, as the media erode the boundaries between childhood and adulthood. In post-modernity, adult surveillance and control increase. What of progress sociologists? March of progress sociologists believe we live in an increasingly child-centered society. I would agree with that. They state that children have never had it so good. Critics argue that this ignores the continued existence of child poverty, abuse, and exploitation. They're saying, no, you're looking at it from a too positive perspective. Yes, children have got it better in some aspects, but a lot worse in others. For example, child poverty, child abuse, and exploitation. You could say teen pregnancies. You could say alcohol abuse. All of these are up. Mental illnesses between children is all up. So how much better is it really for children? Child liberationists argue that children in modern Western society are victims of age patriarchy and are subject to adult control. The new sociology of childhood argues that we must take the perspective of the child, okay? You must look at it from the child's perspective is what the new sociology of children argue. And there we go. That was today's lesson. Thank you for joining today's lesson. You've been brilliant. Well done, my neo-sociologists. That was lesson 6, the new sociology of childhood, and that's the end of the childhood chapter. The next lesson is supposed to be the end of topic test. I'm not sure how I'm going to go about that. I might just put it on the back burner for now. So I might just hold off giving you a test and end of topic test for now, and we'll see where we go from there. Well done today. Great work. Keep up the good work. Make sure you write your notes up and submit them online so I know that you've done the work, and I know you haven't just ignored me or just watched the video and not made any references or answered any questions. Right? Put the notes in. I'll see you later. God bless. Peace.
I'm feeling like Will. I feel like a prince. I'm feeling myself. I'm loaded with bills, cause I wasn't blessed with no Uncle Phil. Don't know how it feels. I wanted to flex, they told me to chill. I'm making a flip. My life is a flick, now load up the film.